Welcome to readers of AU Manufacturing News and the Australian Manufacturing Forum LinkedIn group. I'm Peter Roberts, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all here today. This webinar is on workforce shortages and the steps companies are taking, be they in technology or in staff retention, to tackle them. Today has been made possible with the support of Epicor, a leader in enterprise resource planning, or ERP software. With a history of 50 years in ERP software, Epicor provides end-to-end productivity solutions for manufacturing, distribution, and aged care sectors, helping them do business better. Innovative Epicor solutions are curated to fit customer needs and built to respond flexibly to their fast-growing realities. Later, we'll talk with Greg O'Lone, the Regional Vice President of Epicor in Australia and New Zealand. He can talk about some of those realities. We at AU Manufacturing joined with Epicor to provide a response to what we are hearing every day from readers and clients. Business out there is tough. Wages are going up, rents are going up, energy costs are going up. On top of this, there's a chronic shortage of labour and skills affecting everybody in the industry. Every company, whether they be small, large, in metal fabrication or making medical devices, is short of 10, 20 or 50 staff or more. As one of the CEOs you'll hear from today described it, it's brutal out there. Many manufacturers are turning to technology in the form of automation, or digitizing their businesses and utilizing the latest software to boost efficiencies and make better use of the people they already have. Others are tackling softer issues such as retaining and upskilling staff. They're forging links with high schools, vet colleges and universities to secure the best recruits. But one thing is true, there are not enough people out there to support manufacturers, whether they be in small day-to-day businesses or those undergoing fast growth. Today we brought together a panel of 3 manufacturing CEOs who will discuss their experiences and some of the ways they're coping. Joining us today for a discussion is Richard Simpson, Managing Director of Victorian manufacturer Furnace Engineering. Furnace Engineering designs and manufactures a range of customized heat treatment systems, furnaces and ovens. Patrick Ferron is Financial Controller at metal fabricator Great Western Manufacturing. This Queensland company employs 80 and manufactures in smaller volumes, including agricultural equipment for companies in the wider Great Western Group. And finally, we have Gavin Dunwoodie, Managing Director and Group CEO of Queensland Industrial Automation Company, Products for Industry, or PFI. PFI is the largest of the 3 companies. It employs 300, delivering everything from small engineering solutions to complete factory automation systems. Well, we all know that there are a shortage of labour. Everyone is short of staff. When I talked to the 3 CEOs before today, they all brought up one thing, which was very interesting, and I thought something new. Let's start with Richard Simpson, please, from Furnace Engineering. When I first talked to you, Richard, you said that finding staff was difficult, but finding staff who wanted to engage with the business was much harder. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that from time to time, Peter, you happen upon people who really get the business and they get into it and they're willing and able to help. They're willing to stretch themselves beyond a particular job description. And, you know, I think in most times that's the exception rather than the rule. You're always looking for those people who have that real engagement with the business. I think that in part, particularly in Victoria, the long periods of stay at home have contributed to a lot of people sort of putting lifestyle before work and seeking a lifestyle choice with work to support it. So that does get difficult, that form of engagement. I don't know whether the other manufacturers are experiencing that sort of similar thing. And I think that the other thing that obviously over the last couple of years we've seen is just the shortage of workers, either A, because of the big projects that hoover up talent, or B, the lack of immigration to the country over a period of a couple of years while COVID restrictions were on. Maybe I'll pause there and see if there are any reflections from the others.
Well, I'd like to ask you first, what are you doing to deal with this new kind of person?
I think the answer, Peter, is that you improvise. I'll give you an example of improvisation. Occasionally I pop down to the local shopping centre and have some lunch or a coffee, just to, get out with some of the work colleagues. And there was a nice little coffee shop, and there's a very friendly person behind the bar who one day intimated that she'd really like to do something more than pulling coffees. She's now been with us for 12 months. We recruited her. on the spot. She's working in our service department. She hasn't got a particular qualification that's suited, but she's engaged. She sees it as a career path. And there's a good example from a very unlikely beginning of someone who's actually engaged with the business and saying, well, what job would you like me to do? I'll give it a go. So that's one example. We have recently taken a guy on who we're sponsoring for visa. I think that's fairly common for industry to resort to that. It's somewhat a high risk strategy. It's a costly strategy, but there is an enforced engagement effectively to an extent. While that person is sitting through their visa period. But it gives you the opportunity to build up a rapport with the employee, and hopefully you find again that engagement that someone is happy to have the job, rather than someone who's grudgingly saying, "Oh, I'll work for you until I'll find a job that pays $1 more."
Richard, you're also involved in Swinburne University. I know you're not talking on their behalf at all today,
yeah.
But are we seeing a different cohort of students coming through this system?
That's a tricky question. I think, the whole education space has changed dramatically. People are probably aware that things like lectures don't happen on campus anymore. So engagement of the students with the physical campuses of the various universities is a very different thing these days to what it was. Having said that, I think that the universities are absolutely looking for that engagement on campus, because it's a key factor of the experience that you get going through a university. So it's about adapting, using the technology that's available to allow students to study in their own time, but still wanting them to be on campus for the critical campus experience, the social interaction with colleagues. That's, for many people, quite an important part of their educational experience.
Patrick Ferron from Great Western Manufacturing, you also mentioned a lack of commitment among new employees. So you're in a regional area, Toowoomba, where I know you've got a reasonably steady basic workforce or base workforce. What are you seeing, and what are you doing to tackle this new type of employee?
Well, I suppose it's just trying to help them out and mentor them a bit when you get them in the door. But they do have to have a certain mindset, like Richard said. If they're committed, they'll take to it and then learn the ropes and contribute fairly quickly. But unfortunately, there's a lot that are just there, temporarily, and then you just have to deal with it, I suppose. See if they're good enough to keep going, or do you have to cut your losses at some point? Because we do see some bait and switch as well, where you've got someone who's putting a lot of effort while they're either with a temporary agency or for a probation period. Then once they come on full time, they just seem to relax and not be as productive as they were. So it's an interesting strategy, because they still, for their future, it's not a great, foot forward, but for the immediate, it gives them what they want.
We hear a lot about younger cohorts wanting to have two or three, or imagining they're having two or three different careers. Do people really see manufacturing now, the young people you're seeing, as a long-term career?
I think they can, but according to the new cohort you were saying that's coming in, I was talking to my kid and some of their friends, and they're saying a fair few people have tried apprenticeships, but they're not liking the reality of the work, the environment of the work. So their expectations versus what is actually happening on the floor doesn't necessarily gel, and they're not prepared necessarily to keep going with a more old school type of approach. So we'll certainly have to look into adapting and seeing how we handle and treat the newer recruits.
Indeed. Gavin Dunwoodie from PFI, you're a much larger company, and you've had this problem of lack of workforce in a big way. I know some years ago you advertised on billboards around the Gold Coast. How did that go?
Hi, Peter. Morning, Peter. Morning to your guests. Look, in a nutshell, probably not well. We put 3 big billboards up in major highways around Brisbane and lots of text messages from friends laughing at it. But the reality is I think we got 3 staff out of it. So we were sure we were going to get a great win out of it for the money that went into that. But the reality is 3, it was up for a month and it was on, I don't know how many thousand, probably hundreds of thousands of people saw it. And we got 3 staff. So I'd like to give you better news.
So advertising is such a good idea. I think we learned that in journalism some time ago. Gavin, but you have taken a very radical approach, I think, to this issue. We're talking about engagement in the workforce. Do you want to explain what you've been doing there?
Yeah, so about 12 months ago, I decided that it was time to get real creative. And so I've taken 10% of the company shares and put them to the side. And now if you've been in the business for 2 years, you automatically qualify and you get shares in the company, or you get options in the company that vest after 2 years. And effectively, we're now breaking the equity of the company up and, trying to retain the cash of the company for obvious reasons. I don't need to go into that. I'm sure people understand that the value of cash is worth more than the actual value of cash. So for me, it's about seeing the staff grow into the business. And to do that, they need some skin in the game. And I'm more than happy to give them options. It holds them to the business. And then performance criteria is tied to whether I forgive the loan or we give them more options.
And what's the staff response been to that?
Excellent. Really good. Yeah, really, really good. That's been a really good lever. Worked well.
And I think you mentioned before that you were actually surprised at the upside with management, their response to this.
Yeah, 100%. So, always bet on a horse called self-interest. As soon as the guys have got their skin in the game, definitely you do see a different level of performance. I'd say I'm probably 85% of the staff. They always tell you they're putting in and they're great. But, when they see their future in the real performance of the company, it's surprising they can give that little bit more.
You're growing at 30% a year, I believe. So this is an option available to a very fast-growing company like yours. It may not be so available to Richard or Patrick. Patrick, do you see this as a way forward at all, or Richard, for this for your business?
If I may, Peter, we have an employee share scheme and have operated for some time. I'd observed a number of schemes operating in other companies, particularly a few American colleagues. And one of the things that I noticed was that it was quite effective with management who had access to accounts and understood that the accounts were an accurate representation of the business. But a degree of suspicion with not our one, with the American colleagues, particularly a degree of suspicion from the factory workforce, as seeing it as some sort of a way that the boss was somehow shafting them because it never seemed as good as they thought it would be. But, the positive for us, certainly for the last 20 years, we've operated on that basis, that key executives or key employees have been offered an opportunity to buy into the company. And because they buy in, there is skin in the game. They see a good return while we're profitable, which has been throughout that period. And they get the idea that the success of the company is going to benefit them along the way. So yes, it is a positive. It's a virtuous circle.
Patrick, are you finding you have to pay your staff more to retain them or to get them?
To a degree. Many of them we've kind of tried to hold the line as much as possible for obvious reasons, to keep costs in checks. But no, so far we're still managing to put on people at the rates that we've been increasing progressively, but we haven't had to make huge jumps. I mean, talking to billboards, we did have one from competitors down the road offering at least 20% more, and we haven't seen anybody jump ship because of that. So, either they're happy where they are, or like billboards are really ineffective. So it's been interesting.
Perhaps there are other things than cash that motivate people. Gavin, I think you had a view about companies that are paying more and more for labour, and then perhaps in the more competitive regions, we're seeing companies fork out a lot more. What's the future for those companies that are spending more at the moment?
Look, it's only my view. I think it's very dangerous, and I think it's yet to play out. I think there's still companies that are racing to fill existing contracts or current workloads, which are still post-COVID either hit their peak or might be just coming off. But the reality is they're tied to contracts or they're tied to a commitment to get that work done, and they'll pay whatever they need to pay to get that out the door. So we're seeing some healthy opposition throwing some extra healthy rates around. And I've been doing this 20 years. I know what's sustainable. And some of the rates I don't think, and I had a quick chat to you yesterday about it, I just don't see sustainability in some of the rates. And I'm sure some of the CEOs are going to be nodding their head here a little bit. And I refuse to jump into that race. I've seen these cycles, and there is a brutal one coming. Not a brutal downturn, a brutal ability to withstand the fixed overheads against margin. It's all out of balance, and I think it'll realise pretty quick.
Okay, I'd like to turn now to Greg O'Lone from Epicor. Greg, you've had your big event just recently on the Gold Coast and talked to a lot of clients there. I think it exhausted you, actually. So what are you hearing from your clients on workplace shortages and skill shortages?
It's certainly a problem across the board, particularly in Australia and New Zealand region. Our customers from the broader Pacific area don't seem to have the same impact, which is interesting. However, from Auckland through to Perth, we're hearing the same thing. Labour shortage is a problem. Competition for talent has been a problem. I do agree with Gavin in that it becomes unsustainable when you get to a certain level, and I think those things balance out. So customers are telling me it's been hard. They're getting creative on how to both retain and attract staff, and as Peter, when we were discussing the other day, looking to other regions within the Asia Pacific area for staff, and not necessarily just looking to their competition. But yeah, the cost has become unsustainable, and this means that our customers are having to delay other projects to meet the demand of servicing contracts they've got with their customers. So yeah, a mixed bag, but it appears to have reached maybe a tipping point. The feedback from customers is that they're able to manage at the moment, and they're looking optimistic towards growth now in their employment base.
So one of the themes today is technology as an assistance here of an inspiration for staff, and also making better use of them. Could you just explain how ERP and MRP fits into that?
Sure. Well, broadly, MRP, ERP software works together to run a business. You would say end to end, from management on the shop floor to financials and workflows and processes that go into a business. So broadly, that's where they sit. ERP will give the advantage of being a single system that enables data to be connected. MRP, which is really the manufacturing process management, that will either be within the same system or tightly integrated. The idea is that the data within your business is more accessible, more connected, and the idea there is that enables you to make faster decisions and do things with that data. That's becoming the tipping point right now. Customers are very excited about integrating their business end to end, whether it be data from a machine or better inventory data or better financials, to be able to make a decision, not at this level, not at the CEO level, but at the business level, either the line operator or the operator themselves, being able to make a decision within the business and not wait for someone to come along, do some analysis, talk to the team and redirect. So that's some of the advantages. We're starting to see a lot more screens around the shop floor and on the top floor, which is given that data feed, people can adjust their workflows, their processes, or at least be aware of the impact they're having on the business.
I think you mentioned before you thought people should use the software out of the box. And what does that mean?
So ideally, don't go about a software project where you buy some software and you completely customize it to do what you want. This takes a lot longer. This is a very expensive way of doing it. But gone are the days where you have to write the software from the ground up. There's plenty of packaged software available from the likes of Epicor or our competitors, where the software is built for your business. So over the shoulder, we claim made with you, for you, and we're very industry specific. So whether it be manufacturing or other industries, look for the industry specific software that's built to understand your processes and workflows as much as possible. It's never going to be everything. It can't be. There are unique workflows or processes to your business that well could be a competitive advantage. Then customize the software to match that.
Like Gavin Dunwoodie, I think you take a slightly different view of software and do a lot of customizing yourself. How do you go approach things?
Again, Peter, I'd like to have a good news story, but I don't. We took a software and probably we've customized it to a level that we don't even recognise the original software. So I'm probably a good example of what not to do, but if that's my value today, then that's great too. We took it. It's obviously very good software out of the US, and then very quickly pulled it from top to tail into what we wanted as a business, as an ERP. Again, brutal, and probably if I had my time again, I wouldn't do it. But I've got to reiterate what Greg's saying. If you make an early choice that's not quite right, it'll be the gift that keeps giving. And we've finally sorted it out, but it hasn't been without a lot of pain. Slowed our business down, created cultural challenges, and made me work.
I imagine you're not shy of working hard, Gavin. Can we just turn to Patrick Ferron for a moment? Patrick, you're a much smaller business and much less complex, I guess, than Gavin's business, 80 people, and perhaps more typical of many companies we talk to in AU manufacturing. You've got yourself, financial controller, and a manufacturing director, and manufacturing management is rather limited. So how do you go about solving the problem of how to use such software?
Well, essentially, we've been using it at a very minimal level for the past couple of decades. But with the factory manager that came in around the same time as I have, who has worked with MRP before, he's very keen to bring it in because he knows the advantages that it'll bring with it. So basically, like you said, we've got a limited amount of time and options given the small team. So we just try to hit the low-hanging fruit first and implement the features of the system that we think are going to give us our best return as quick as possible. And MRP is certainly on the list that we hope to put into the next couple of months.
So you're rolling things out slowly, sort of module by module.
Correct. I mean, right now we're just working on time capture in the factory to avoid people writing things down and then someone retyping them, which comes, workforce retention wise, they're applauding the move. They absolutely dislike filling out those timesheets, and rightly so. So just that kind of improvement there, which is a fairly quick implementation, is a quick win. So,
so Richard, where do you stand on this continuum between Gavin and Patrick with software as a tool?
Well, it's I think there's a universal truth that has been coming through, particularly Greg's and Gavin's comments that we experienced too. We implemented an accounting system, which also dovetails into our engineering operation around about 12 years ago, 15 years ago. And we had 12 months of pain with around about 60 customizations. And we had a fresh CFO come in by chance at that stage, who looked at it and said, this is all wrong. We cut it down to 12 customizations, and we've had a very stable and functional system, but we had to sacrifice some of our, wishes or hopes for increased automation. Now, 12, 15 years down the track, whilst that's been an excellent piece of software for us, principally on the accounting side, but also purchasing and job costing, we're now looking to the future and saying, all right, what's available to us? Patrick mentioned, the bane of a jobbing environment of capturing timesheets and such like. That's just one element that we want to automate so that we don't triple enter data. Someone writes it, then it has to get entered into a payroll module, it has to get entered into a job cost module. I mean, those are the sort of efficiencies that in the modern age we would absolutely hope to be able to solve with the right system. And it's one of those ones that you draw the deep breath, because you know that when you make a generational shift on the software that you're using to run your business, you're making that choice and you're hoping that you're going to have that 10 to 15 years of benefit from it. And you're also hoping that you're not going to have 2 years of pain and suffering, but rather a relatively short, sharp implementation phase. So I'm looking to make gains on what we're actually doing at the moment, which is a little bit passé in some respects, but it's very robust.
Greg, do you want to respond to what the guys have said, especially about the smaller nature of Australian companies and the difficulties compared to the leaders? They don't have any trouble, I guess.
No, every project that a customer embarks on involving ERP, whether in my time here or with other companies, always has issues. There's complexity, there's problems to solve, and that sometimes comes about with, we'll just solve the problem with customization. So there is a happy medium there, where you hear of many, 50 or 100 or 200 customizations, and streamlining down to a handful is a great outcome. Sometimes it can be none, but I find that actually customers who go for 0 customizations, that impacts further on, where some productivity is impacted. One of our customers, I was chatting with a couple of the blokes from the Royal Australian Mint, and they're one of our customers, and they were the leadership at the Mint, and I hope they don't mind me talking about them. The leadership at the Mint were very happy with the project because it was on time and on budget. The team wanted to see some of their unique workflows follow through, and that's happening now. But it was probably a great objective to get to, on time, on budget, and 0 customizations, and then grow from there where you need it. I think where you try and do it all up front, you get a longer project, it costs a lot more. There's a lot of complexity and a lot of pressure on a team. So my opinion is out of the box as much as you can. And to get that, that's really leadership standing up and challenging the ideas that are coming through.
What about software as a service as a response to some of these companies with limited management skills?
The advantage of software as a service or a public cloud environment is the fact that you're not having to manage a whole heap of infrastructure. You ask yourself, what are we best at? What are we good at? Typically that's not running IT kit. That takes at least one person in a small business or a crew in a larger business. So most of our customers and our prospective customers coming through are saying, well, we've already decided it's going into a public cloud or a SaaS environment. That fixes the infrastructure management issue. And also things like security and accessibility. It's a lot easier to get on mobile outside of the workplace as well. And you get the advantage of upgrades are almost immediate without a whole heap of work and re-kitting hardware. So those upgrades happen seamlessly multiple times a year, depending on the software vendor. And you get the advantage. You're still going to pay that money every year. And if you're staying on an old version, a couple of years old, 2, 3 years old, because your version lock, because you've over-customized, you're then not getting the value for money that you're actually paying for, and you're contributing to our R&D to give you those features. So it has a lot of advantages. It does make life a lot easier, and it's one less thing to have to focus on in your day and take advantage.
Let's turn to more people issues and the issue of upskilling training inside your business. Gavin, you're doing a lot in your company to upskill your staff and use that as a tool of keeping people. Could you explain what you're doing?
We're very diversified. So we've got income streams in various sectors with various technologies, from aerospace to food and bev to petrochem to mining to general manufacturing. So, one size fits all model for us is just too big a cast net. So what we've done is tried to find applicable skills for the incomes effectively that come into the business. So I think we've got 40 or 50 of our staff at the moment doing Cert 4 in engineering. And that includes some of the admin that want to know more about what PFI does, because some of the stuff is fairly complex that we do, automation, robotics, or titanium extrusion or whatever. So for us, it's about, giving them some buy-in technically with the Cert 4, and then we've got, maybe, I don't know the numbers, but there's a fair few doing OH&S, Cert 3 in OH&S. So there's 50 or maybe as many as 60 people at the moment doing Cert 3s and Cert 4s, and the government make that decision very easy for me too.
I understand you do pay for their tuition, though. It's quite an expense.
Thanks, Peter, for reminding me. It is. Yep.
You mentioned the figure of $28,000 per person, and this is a lot of money. And you said that we get to keep them for a year. Is that worth it?
Oh, look, we don't do it to, obviously, the government contribute very well. I do have to thank the government for that one. That's why I said they make the decision easy, and I think we might make up the gap. But the side benefit is that we keep them for 12 months. I certainly don't do it to keep them. We try and do that by creating a good work environment, Peter. But definitely the training is there to upskill them.
And you've got relationships, I think, with some vet providers. Could you describe them?
Relationships with what, sorry, Peter?
With the vet institutes.
We've got partnerships with UQ, QUT. We've got graduates that come through. I've got research programs that I'm about to start with them. So we do get a good look at some of the graduates, and we get some rippers that come through. Actually, that's a whole different conversation of the quality that's coming through. It's great.
Yeah, of course. And look, Richard, you're immersed in the graduate programs. You've done a few in the past with your staff. How are they working for you?
Well, we at our probably peak graduate, we had around 9 less than 3 years out of uni graduates on a program. That was back prior to the GFC, so that's a long time in the rearview mirror. And we've got, I think, 1 or 2 of those people still with us. So it was good for retention. I myself did a graduate program at Ford Motor Company when I started working back in the 90s. So I think there's a great deal of value to that sort of teaching or pedagogy and sort of mentoring, I think, that comes with the schemes. We generally have a couple of graduates on. We have 3-4 apprentices on at any time. I think the relationship with the training institutions is very valuable. To Gavin's point, great if you can also tack on other activities such as research projects and getting from both engineering stream, for example, or graduate scheme, shall I say, higher education as well as vet. It's difficult though. It's a people game. And at any of the institutions, your connection is as good as the person you're dealing with that facilitates those introductions to the good talented graduates that you might want to take on, or undergraduates. And that's probably the tricky thing. You know, we're sitting right next to Monash University here. I can look out my office and see it from here. But it's not always been the case that we've had great interaction with them, because it is that personal connection and the prioritisation that institution has with engaging with industry. So I think visibility of industry as a great career path is particularly important. And I think most of the universities really aim to make those good connections with industry, but it's a continual effort to do so, both on universities' part and on industry's part, to reach into those campuses.
Yes, now you mentioned apprenticeships briefly there. The overall figures show that a lot of people are dropping out, especially the last couple of years with COVID. Are you seeing the worth of apprenticeships changing?
Look, there could be hundreds of reasons why that might be the case. Certainly one in Victoria, there was, as I understand it, with free apprenticeships that were offered at one stage. There was a lot of pent-up demand that was satisfied by those sort of programs. I mean, if you're ever thinking of doing an apprenticeship, the government's going to pay for it for nothing, well, you jump in. And I think there was a little bit of a hangover from that once that scheme sort of tailed off. I think also people have touched in this discussion earlier on lifestyle approach, whether that sort of work is for people. Overall trends, I mean, there are a lot of people who would like to work but like it to support their lifestyle. But within any given cohort, there are people who absolutely want to do something, and they want to further their career. They want to do something meaningful. So you've just got to, as always, you've got to find the way through to get the people that are actually going to make the difference to your business. And I think that seems to come across from the other participants in this discussion, is that you don't get anywhere by just filling a job with someone, best available candidate. You're really almost better to hold out and hold it together with sticky tape until you can get the people that will actually engage with your business and make a difference.
Patrick, you're from a regional area, Toowoomba, where traditionally in those sort of areas you do see a great retention of staff, loyalty. Are people still interested in apprenticeships in Toowoomba?
Well, they may be interested, but they don't necessarily stick with the program. Our training organizations are telling us that we're in contact with are saying the dropout rates are as high as they've ever been. And, some come again to lifestyle. We had a couple of apprentices drop off because they could get a higher paying casual rate somewhere else. So it's not looking at the long term for their future there, but unfortunately, that's kind of what we're up against.
What about you, Gavin? What do you say about apprenticeships?
We're okay, but I do feel for Patrick, it's a little bit hard. It depends on the region you're in. For us, we're about to bring another scheme in, which will be adult apprenticeships, and we're going to differentiate again. It's all about why would they stick it out? As an adult apprenticeship, the wages are lower. When they're young, they're distracted. And again, you've got to understand their lifestyle. You can put everything on the table that you would think would hold an apprentice, and we're going okay, but we're so diversified and we like a bit of risk, and we're not punching widgets out here. So that tends to help, but it's good luck holding them.
So, Greg, you're a software man and a technology man, but how important are these cultural issues in retaining staff?
We experience a lot of very similar issues within our business, both here and worldwide. I suspect that the technology industry has gone through these issues a little bit faster and harder than others. So we've seen significant redundancies in the technology industry over the past months up until probably December. January timeframe, where we were seeing a lot of people getting put off work. That was driven by a tech bubble because of COVID. People were adopting technology a lot faster, and then some companies were overhiring. There was a lot of competition for talent that was driving up wages, and it was making it very competitive and a significant issue. That's turned. It's turned to redundancies, and that's slowed down now. Seeing that across the industry. Within our business, what we were seeing was that competition during that peak time coming from software vendors that were in the same location as us, very similar to what we're hearing today in Bangalore, where we are. We're very close to the likes of Google and other large players, so they were offering good money and taking staff. We're lucky we've passed that. One of the things that we invested in for this year is that retention of staff and the attraction of staff through various programs, and I think that's what's come out loud and clear here to me today. There's no one magic bullet. There's a mix of tactics for retention and attracting new staff that you have to deploy. Don't think that you've got it right with one. Try something else. And Gavin appears to be innovating in this space and trying different things. I love apprenticeships for older people. I wonder if there's an apprenticeship.
Greg, what are you doing after this?
I might come up and visit you. Do an apprenticeship.
The weather's beautiful.
I think the baby boomers are causing a problem because they left the workforce and maybe artificially fast. And so, obviously the federal government's looking at programs to try and bring them back. I think there's an opportunity there to bring them back up. Potentially, it's a retraining issue, so potentially an apprenticeship. So I'm just thinking off the top of my head there, because I see that as a significant issue. I love what you said about lifestyle before work, Richard. That's an interesting issue. The lifestyle choice. That can be very dangerous as an employee, because if I choose lifestyle, the employer could choose alternative source of employees, and that could be offshore to do your job. If you can do the job from home, someone else can do it from their home in another country at a lower price. So that could be a dangerous road for anyone to go down. So there's a mixture of issues. We experience them as well. I think we're lucky in the tech industry that we've sort of overcome that. We've been through the dip and we're coming out the other side.
I think you've just given me your summary there a little bit early, Greg.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
I do want to raise a couple of other issues. One is a sort of change in business direction as a way to tackle the issue of shortages. And Gavin, you entered the aerospace business as an attempt to enthuse some of your people. How did that work out for you?
Yeah, look, mostly okay. We've got some contracts we're fulfilling now, but we used it as a point of difference again to attract graduates, and we did that very successfully. Obviously, you tell a university that we're a general engineering or an automation firm that make big conveying systems or big material. I'll have a look at Boeing, or I'll have a look at something else, Northrop. So once we had an aerospace business, it was very handy to differentiate again. That's the word I've used a few times. So, it worked well. It worked very well. And some of those staff from 3, 4, 5 years ago are still here.
But you've exited that business now, I believe.
Well, we're completing some works in that area, but it's far from a focus for us. Yeah, we're Johnny come lately in that game.
Patrick, you've got a slightly different situation. You do a lot of things there. I understand you used to manufacture truck bodies and so on, as well as the agricultural equipment for your own company network, and you moved out of that. So was that a conscious thing to change direction?
Yeah, there's definitely been a bit of more of a focus. Some of the product lines that we were working on were very, very heavy users of fabrication hours. So by moving away from those, just product that we can get out the door quicker. So in other words, agricultural machinery for us, it's certainly given us a lot more flexibility and less dependence on all the fabrication hours and all the fabrication overtime. Because to meet our deadlines, we had to really push our staff, and they can do it for a certain amount of time, but you're eventually going to hit burnout if you keep pushing them too hard. So pivoting towards a simpler product, yet more in-demand product certainly is helping us out.
Richard, on the matter of workplace skills and so on, the new government and the state ministers do seem to be working very well together in terms of going through the many issues that face the education of young people. Do you have any comment, a more general comment on what could be done more in that area?
Peter, that's a good loaded question. I would probably take the attitude that if the government can stay out of the way as much as possible, that'd be great, because I think we find that we're overburdened with red tape of one sort or another. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do. I mean, we're 80 people in this business, so we've got a reasonable sort of administrative overhead. Small business must really struggle. I mean, if you think about just the compliance issues around payroll, in order to not find yourself, in a situation where you've unwittingly underpaid someone or what have you. But I think that there's good opportunities that governments who are putting a positive spin on it. I think there's good opportunities that the government can create in ensuring that Australian industry participates in projects. Defence is a good area where that tends to be the case. We see that also with research institutions, talking about sort of product development. Our engagement over the last 15 years, particularly with educational institutions, this is with my furnace hat on, to take emerging technologies from research project to industrial scale in such a way that the customers don't get damaged by the process of developing that technology. That's a great activity, and it is underpinned the research stage by government funding for research projects. So I think to me, research funding, it's a big topic of interest. I think Australia is punches above its weight in research. It could do more. But the commercialisation of that research, ensuring that it doesn't just get sold overseas, but rather that we create an ecosystem here that is good at taking that research into a well-developed product. That's an area where collective focus could well be spent.
Amen.
Amen. Look, that's a terrific point, and one we're going to be tackling more in AU manufacturing, the fall in the innovative effort in Australia from a high of 2.1% of GDP on innovation to 1.64, the most recent figures this week, and 1.64 is half really of our competitors, and a third of the leaders in terms of innovation effort. And we hear this thing punching above our weight. I think we do a good job when we do it, but we're just not doing enough. Gavin, do you see any end to this situation of living in an environment where there are shortages, where you're having to work like this to run very hard?
Yeah, I do think there is an end coming to it. I think it's back to a normal. I'm already seeing it just a little bit now, which is nice. We certainly don't want a downturn. I think it creates misery. But I do need to see normalisation, and we are just at the start of it now. I think it'll start to accelerate. Well, I'm probably not qualified to comment, but my opinion is that, I think by about January next year, you'll start to see the market normalise, and there's some sensibility and sleep come back to the CEO.
Let's hope so. Greg, you did give us some summary up before. Do you want to add a few comments before we close the webinar?
I look at just a couple of things, and Gavin, I'm with you. The data I'm looking at, I'm optimistically thinking post-Christmas, probably February, when people come back from holidays, the cycles appear to line up with good times ahead from then onwards. So maybe we all stick it out, work hard. From that point of view, then, if you're going to be making a change to your business, to your platform or investments, I'm of the opinion that any strategy you put into play takes roughly a minimum of 6 months to see the benefit of it. So start planning now for that horizon that's coming. My advice from a software vendor's point of view is to buy software that's industry specific for you. Invest into SaaS-enabled platforms and platforms that are either highly integrated or can easily be integrated. That's one thing I'm hearing my customers very excited about, is the ability to integrate different systems easily. That's been a challenge of the past, and there's modern tools that enable that to work a lot easier. That is all driven by this need for data, and the consumption of data, whether it be in analytics or business intelligence tools, or your systems to enable you to make the most of opportunities that come your way. So other than what I mentioned earlier and some of the points that I've agreed on with the other presenters today, I honestly believe that it is a battle at the moment for attention. It's a battle for recruitment, but that will get easier.
Thank you, Greg. That brings us to the end of our webinar today. I hope you all got something out of it. Thanks to everyone at home for joining us in our discussion today. I'd like to thank our panel for also joining us and for that fascinating discussion: Richard Simpson, Patrick Ferron, and Gavin Dunwoodie. And a special thank you to Greg O'Lone and the team at Epicor. Thank you and good day.